Hello and welcome to the Choirlosophy Podcast, a weekly podcast whose mission is multifaceted. Each week when you tune in, you will find episodes that question best practices, challenge music education dogma, facilitate conversations about touchy topics, demonstrate pedagogies, and conversations where colleagues learn from each other. This is the First Days of Choir, Part 5. The fifth part of a series that I've aired in the month of August, mostly, on the Choirlosophy Podcast, that has been inspired by one of my favorite educational texts, The First Days of School by Harry Wong. With regrets, Harry won't be making much of an appearance in this episode, as it gets a little bit more music specific than Harry ever would have mentioned in one of his books. So I'm going to be leaving his text directly behind in episodes 1, 2, 3, and 4, so make sure you don't miss those. This one is going to be more focused on some of the specific musical elements that would be particular to us at the beginning of the school year as mostly vocal or music educators. I'm also going to be playing some live clips into my first days of school with a few of my groups. Apologies to some of the people who wrote in, and there were a lot of you that wrote in asking specifically to see clips and see video into my actual first days of school, especially with my beginners. And here's the deal with that, guys. I thought people have been asking me that for years, and I just don't feel good about it. I don't feel good about turning on the camera when the beginners who are already scared out of their minds to be in my class where we sing a cappella and make noises in front of each other and sometimes by ourselves and all this kind of stuff. It's already scary. I'm not turning the camera on for them. So the groups that you're going to see are our kids that have come back for multiple years. So you could think of it as, in fact, there's one intermediate group. That's the youngest group you'll see, and they're in their second year in our high school choir program. You'll see our third year, mostly kids, and you'll also see some clips from, I guess, what you would call my most advanced group, which is my chamber choir that meets outside of school. And you're going to see some moments from their first day of instruction. And there will be longer clips that the Patreon subscribers will be able to find in private links over on the Patreon page, or if you're a paid Substack subscriber, you'll have access to those as well. And finally, we're also going to have a portion of the episode where I reflect myself as just kind of a way to be vulnerable and open up to you about ways that you could be reflecting about how your school year has started. I'm assuming now that as my voice reaches you, most educators in this audience have already started school. So what happens when a certain thing doesn't go super well, or you'd like to redirect, or you want a do-over on that year? You don't want to lose this year. Like Harry Wong says, if you don't start well, it's really hard to get going. Well, it is hard, but it's not impossible. So you'll be getting a little bit of all of that in this episode. So stick around, and I hope you find this one as useful as the Harry-inspired episodes that came before. Choir directors, music educators, show planners, you pour your heart into your music. Shouldn't your events get the same attention? That's where Ludus comes in. Sell tickets, promote your concerts, and fundraise with ease. Selling merchandise and concessions? Ludus Retail makes in-person sales effortless. Running choir camps or workshops? They have a classes feature that keeps registration simple, and when you need help, the live support team is ready to pop up with real answers from real people. The best part? It's completely free for organizations. Thousands of music programs already trust Ludus because great music deserves more than just a ticketing system. Are you a director new to the profession? Or are you a seasoned director who is in a new place? One of my favorite tips for generating interest in the program and to instill buy-in is to plan a trip. There are so many options. You can go to Orlando, you can go to Ireland, or you can perform in a parade or a theme park. You can even take the stage at Carnegie Hall in New York. Wherever you end up, not only will your current crew look forward to the trip, but younger students will count the days until it's their turn to go. If you have no idea where to start, connect with Kaleidoscope Adventures at mykatrip.com. I'm not sure how much, if anything, out there has not gone up in price since 2020, but I know one thing that hasn't, and that is the membership to the Patreon and to the Substack to support this show. The people who are signed up over there as paid subscribers, as my thank you to them, they can get things like t-shirts from the choirlosophy.com shop. They can also get access to my Google folder of teaching materials that I've talked about on the show for over the years. And of course, they just want to help make sure that this show can continue. And one of those benefits is a shout out on the show. Shout outs for the Inner Circle and producer tiers go to Brian Long, Chandler Smith, Venture Studios, Jonah Clixbull, Ulrike Igrain Munoz Alarcon, Angie Schilling, David Kowalczyk, Jared Hendricks, Kyle Peterson, Max Jackson, Michael Herron, Nathan Hines, Rebecca Chalk, RJ McCracken, and Steve and Kathy Kakachik. So one of the reasons that I had the idea to do this Harry Wongless episode of as part 5 is that I was getting some questions after parts 1, 2, 3, and 4 that, of course, I'm not surprised to get. They were more choir specific, and I thought I would leave Harry behind. And one of the most common questions, in addition to can we see your beginners, and I thought about it, but I think no, I don't think that's the right thing to do. One of the other most common questions was about voicing the beginners. So getting them into a place where they can jump in and start singing, which of course I talked about a lot in part 1, 2, 3, and 4. Like, yes, it's important that they're singing right away, that they're sounding good right away, etc. And these were really good questions, which is basically, well, but how do we do that if they're new to our program and we're not sure how they should sing, where they should sing? Should they sing tenor? Should they sing bass? Should they sing alto or soprano? Should they sing hard stuff or easy stuff, etc.? And if we want them to do stuff right out of the gate at the beginning, then how do we parse that? So those are all great questions, and I got lots of questions that kind of centered around that. So let's take voicing first, and I'm going to say something very controversial, which is that boys and girls are different. Their educational needs are different, and their vocal needs are different. And so I strongly advocate for gender-specific tenor, bass, and soprano alto choirs. Because, of course, there is just too much research that shows that the educational and emotional needs are different. But then, of course, we should also, as professionals, all know in vocal area that their vocal needs are different. So when we get tenors and basses, if we're talking about 8th graders, 9th graders, etc., when that voice is starting to change, they just don't want to sing in front of the girls. And of course, there are exceptions out there. And if you've got a program where your changing voice guys sing freely and openly and with vigor in front of the girls and their voices crack and all those things happen, and it all happens in the same room, then more power to you. I would love to find out how you do that. I just know that that's not super typical of the way that the guys that age feel and respond. So what we do is when they get to 9th grade, I wish it was before, but our school district won't let us do it, is when they get to 9th grade, we separate them out into tenor bass group, beginner tenor bass, and beginner soprano alto. So the voicing then, that creates an environment where the voicing process can be different for both classes because they're different processes. They're different vocal functions. Now, I will say that the process that I do now, if I were to retire and go somewhere else, which a lot of teachers do, and go teach somewhere else in a place that I didn't have beginning tenor bass separate and beginning soprano alto, I would still voice them differently. And I would explain to everybody, like, oh, it's not fair. Okay, so why are we all doing something different? And the reason would be because equity. The reason would be because we give an education things to the people based on what they need, not to make them all the same. Okay, so that would be my argument. And so here's basically what we do. Within the first 2 or 3 days in tenor bass, like very, very, very quickly, as quick as I can, getting through all those other things, we are already voicing. Because with the tenors and basses, it is a different thing altogether, a completely different thing to ask a 14-year-old whose voice, say they're cambiata still, right? And singing tenor even is going to be a stretch for that kid. To be singing the same music as all the boys across the room whose voices have already dropped an octave, and they're constantly being asked to sing the same stuff. And if we wait a couple weeks into the school year to figure out who those tenors and basses are, that's a long time for that kid to suffer. And on the flip side, where those boys who have just recently hit the basement and they don't know how to negotiate it, they don't know how to get up into that upper octave, etc., and they're standing right next to the cambiata, hearing all those interesting higher octaves, and they don't know how to function, they don't know how to get their voice to go up there without hurting, and so we've got a whole bunch of worms in a can that we need to put back in. And so the voicing, in my mind, of the group starts right away with the tenors and basses. Whereas with the sopranos and altos, it's not as critical. In fact, I would point to the episode that happened here on the show with Bridget Sweet, and she was in Missouri recently talking about the identity, the kind of sometimes harmful identities that choir directors place upon adolescent females with this connection to I am a soprano or I am an alto. Let's think about that contrast. If I asked that cambiata boy to sing bass in 9th grade, he's just physically going to be unable to phonate at those pitches. So I'm asking him to do something impossible. And regular listeners, you know how I feel about asking people to do things that are impossible. It's not going to lead to good mental health outcomes for anybody involved. Whereas if I'm asking a 14-year-old female student to sing alto when she is maybe biologically or whatever a soprano, that's a lighter lift. doing something different than they normally would do is a lighter lift. We're not talking about these octave displacements that we deal with in tenor bass choir, right? So in soprano alto classes for beginners, we do not assign soprano or alto ever, all school year long, at all. And of course, they do come to us with identities budding already of, well, I sang soprano last year. I'm a soprano. And in their mind, I sang soprano last year equals I am a soprano. And I sang alto last year equals I am an alto. And of course, that word am is tricky. And I try to train that out of them right away. You sang alto. That doesn't mean you are an alto. You sang alto. And of course, they look very confused at first. And then we have the conversation. We always talk about why we're doing the things we're doing. And this is right again out of Harry Wong. Kids need to know what they're doing, but also why. And so we talk about for the sopranos and altos that we're actually not going to voice you anytime soon. We're not going to tell you that you're a soprano, you're an alto. What we do with them is completely different. So now I'm going to kind of lay the scene, right? So at the beginning of the school year, sopranos and altos come in, typically, on average, of course, even though there are distinguishing factors and features on average between males and females in adolescence. But of course, the disclaimer is everyone is an individual and not everyone fits within those binaries. In fact, sometimes people argue about whether or not sex is a binary or gender is a binary. And I would say neither side of the argument is true, but that's my cross to bear. Really, gender is a bimodal distribution. So if I've lost you, please Google the difference between binary and bimodal distribution. That's what it is. And ultimately, that means that there are characteristics that are most of the time true for females and most of the time true for males. And it's important to know those things, especially if you're an educator of budding males and females, right? But it doesn't mean it's always true. And so we have to be careful with that kind of dogmatic language of this is what boys do and this is what girls do. And we bake this into the whole conversation, okay? But we also talk about how the soprano and alto, or the typical female and adolescent voice functions and the male voice and adolescent functions, and how they are different, but also how they're similar, right? So this is, again, the attempt is to try to tie all these things together. So with the sopranos and altos, we tell them that we're not going to assign them soprano and alto until 10th grade at the soonest, and maybe even later than 10th grade. Maybe they're going to be singing soprano sometimes. Maybe they'll be singing soprano 1 sometimes, and then soprano 2 sometimes. They're going to try to learn to use their whole voice and unify their registers. Can I sing freely through the chest voice into the transition, into the head voice, etc.? And that's going to be their project from the very beginning. Whereas, again, like I said before, asking tenors and basses in puberty to do that is a completely different ask. There are barriers that are in play there that would make that not a very good strategy. So our classes are separate. So on day 2, Day 3 at the latest in tenor and bass, I have them down around the piano, single file right around me, and we have learned My Country 'Tis of Thee. A lot of kids in our school district already know it, which is great, although there's nothing magic about that song. So I make the joke usually, we're going to sing this not because I'm trying to brainwash you into loving America. We're just going to sing it because you already know it, and I want it to be some kind of a tune you already know. And then I also want a tune that starts somewhere around the tonic and then has some type of dominant melodic structure. So something that starts on a do and then has a phrase that starts on a so or somewhere in there, so that I can hear their speaking voice and then some attempt at their calling or head voice. So My Country 'Tis of Thee fits that bill. And we learn it, we sing it together as a group, we sing it in different keys. So I usually I call my key of F as kind of like a medium voice for those beginning tenors and basses. And most of them can sing it in the key of F. The vast majority of them can. But then what we do is we go around and, yes, gasp, clutch, pearls, we sing it by themselves. Each kid sings it by themselves. And the way I do that, yes, in front of each other. We're ripping off the Band-Aid. That's the whole philosophy. We're ripping off the Band-Aid early in the year. They're singing it in front of each other, but they don't sing the whole song. And if they get off or they struggle, I help them. We explain to them it's not a performance exam. It's not that deep. It's just I'm trying to hear your voice and where it rings the most. So we might start at F. If that seems too low, then we go up to G. And if that seems too high, we come back down to F, and we're just experimenting. And I might not even have them sing the whole song. It could just be, can you sing the first My Country 'Tis of Thee? All right, now skip ahead to Land Where My Fathers Died. I just want to hear how they negotiate that. Are they pitch matching? Do they have their calling voice or head voice yet? Do they have a chest voice yet? Those types of things. And we bounce around, and we teach them also during the same activity. They're learning to bond. They're learning to pump each other up. when they sing. We make some type of high fives or way to goes or all those types of things part of the process. We also talk, it's our chance at the beginning of the year to establish expectations with how we treat each other. So there's not going to be any snickering or any laughing or anything like that. I tell them that the only way or the best way you're going to ever get written up in this class is if I catch you making fun of someone else singing. And there won't be a warning. There won't be anything like that. It'll just be go to the office, talk to the principal. We don't do that here. That's not okay. All right. And so they get that little speech and we jump in and it's positive. 99.99% of the time, it is positive. Every single guy does it. And then and it takes probably, we had 21 tenors and basses this year, 22, 23 last year. Our numbers are coming down like a lot of people, but even back when it was 35, 40, 45 in that class, we could get through all of that in 1 or 2 class periods where we're going around. Now, here's one of the other fun tricks about the tenors and basses when we voice them is before I pick a key for them to sing it in, F is kind of my standard, but before I pick a key to have them start in, I ask them to introduce themselves in their normal dude voice, right? So they'll say, I'm Tommy Jones. And it usually is like a pretty relaxed voice. Like I'm Tommy Jones. I'm Tommy Jones. And then what I'm listening for is approximate pitch level. I don't have a perfect pitch, so don't get intimidated by that activity. I don't have perfect pitch. I'm estimating. And so I hear that, like if that young boy had a voice that's approximately as deep as mine when I speak, I might take them and have them start, say, like on a D or like on an E, somewhere below that F, so that they have kind of a chance to resonate in their chest voice. But then I'm not done there. So usually I have them answer some other question that is happy or has some emotion attached to it, some positive emotion. And so this year I asked them, oh, and also what's your favorite kind of cookie? And without almost no exceptions, when they answer their favorite cookie, it's higher in pitch. I like chocolate chip. I'm Tommy Jones. What's your favorite cookie? I like chocolate chip. And so, of course, I don't tell them what I'm doing. But I'm listening to the fact that they are not tone deaf. They do have that upper register. They use it with their vocal affect. Episode 160 with Ken Bozeman about that vocal affect concept. Go listen to it. It's hugely important and so awesome, where we go into this concept of getting kids, young singers, beginning singers, to attach the vocal sound that you're trying to make to some emotional speaking sound. It is so much easier for them to get these things. Okay. All right. So back to the voicing activity. So we go through, ask them what their favorite cookie is. I hear a little bit of their higher notes. I hear their lower notes when they speak. And then I pick a key. And I've been doing it for so long that I usually get pretty good at it. So I can get it in the first or second try of where they're going to sing My Country 'Tis of Thee pretty darn successfully. Now, exceptions would happen, of course, if you've got kids that are not from the United States, or maybe they grew up somewhere else and they didn't learn that song. And so I always have backups in mind, even if it's as simple as a call and response, kind of an echo game, where they're not singing something they know, they're singing something I sing in different keys and seeing if they can echo it back. There's ways to modify that activity so that it's not exclusionary or it's not going to make the kid who doesn't know My Country 'Tis of Thee feel stupid. And you can work that into the class as well. So then, again, with the girls, the contrast is that we don't need to do that right away. And so we don't. Instead, they get assigned to groups 1, 2, and 3. And over the first week or so of school, we're observing their behavior. We're trying to listen for where the louder, more confident voices are. Oftentimes, it's based on their eyeballs at the beginning of rehearsal, at the very beginning of the year, which kids seem to be plugged in. Where's the noise coming from when we do our exercises and our reading and etc. And then create a standing chart or a seating chart if you have chairs that mixes around where some of that confidence goes, but they get assigned to groups 1, 2, and 3. And the way I do it doesn't have to be the way you do it, but the way I do it is I color code them on a spreadsheet, and then I project that spreadsheet up onto the screen, and that becomes their standing chart with their very semi-randomly assigned groups 1, 2, and 3. Then you've got, and it could be groups 1 and 2, or it could be 1, 2, 3, 4, depends on how many kids you have, etc. But that's not really the important part. The important part is they're not called soprano, alto, and soprano 2. They are just group 1, group 2, group 3. You could name them Tina, Tammy, and Tommy. It doesn't really matter what you name them. But the point of it is that whenever a new song gets passed out, we're going to use those numbers to reference who sings what part. So far this year, our girls in soprano alto beginner class, they've been assigned to a song where everybody already has been assigned to a song that they sing soprano and a song where they sing alto. And we're going to explain why that is A, possible, and B, really good for you, and C, you're too young to know what voice type you are. Your voice is changing too. We get to have that conversation because a lot of times you'd be shocked at how often girls get to ninth grade. They know the boys' voices are changing. That's famous. The boys' voices are famous. The girls' voices, they don't realize they're changing. And so we talk about that. Like, oh, yeah, it's changing. Have you ever heard a recording of yourself talking when you were like 11? And they're like, I mean, I could go find one. My mom would have one. Well, go listen to it. You will now notice that your voice has changed a lot. It just doesn't change as drastically, maybe not as far, et cetera, in pitch as the boys do, but it does change. So these are all things that we can accomplish within the first week of school by dedicating the time to go through and hear the individual voicing needs of all those tenors and basses. It gives us the chance to get started with the music in an effective way sooner. But in the sopranos and altos, we're trying to achieve something different, to be honest. We have different goals with how we're going to try to get them going. But it is both in alignment with what they need at that age. So I hope that little discussion and that little topic was helpful. In the next part of the episode, we're going to do some clip listening. And then at the end, I'll do some reflecting on how the first week has gone so far. I don't know if you've heard about it. If you haven't heard about it, you've got to go try 3-Minute Theory. You can go to 3minutetheory.com and you can check it out now when you decide to get this comprehensive system of pre-made materials for your music theory related concepts. You just go into that account and pull out tons of ready-made material. I don't think you'll be even able to teach all of it in 1 year. It's so much stuff that you can tailor make and custom make to your needs. So go check it out. And of course, use the Choralosophy discount code when you sign up to get a 15% discount on your membership. The first clip you're going to hear is from my chamber choir at our back to school retreat. So this is minutes after I saw them again, all gathered in the same place for the beginning of the school year. Technically, it's not the first day of school, but it is the first day of rehearsal for these kids. It happens prior to the school year starting. And so this rehearsal clip that you're going to see is an awesome, certified, straight up banger of a piece of choral music called Hope by Zachary Moore. And this is the first time they have seen it. So it was handed to them. It was not sent to them ahead of time over the summer to study. It was just handed to them. They were given about 15 minutes to take it out into sectionals, and these are student-led sectionals. Now, keep in mind, this is my most advanced group, so they've been through the boot camp, so to speak, of how to put all this music together on their own. And if you're curious about more about the student-led sectional aspect, you can also look up that episode. I have an episode mostly filmed at this retreat location in previous years of how those student-led sectionals are put together over time and then the result of them. So this clip is their very first time leaving for sectionals for about 15 minutes and then coming back together to try to combine Hope by Zachary Moore. So stick around and listen to this one, and I hope you enjoy this little peek into it. And like I said in the intro, the rest of this rehearsal portion is available to Patreon subscribers.
We're going to try to sing what we learned. Oh, you're starting to hit. 1, 2, T, and mi, 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 so. Sa, 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 how is your entrance written? Forte piano, what does that mean? Yes, as an otter, you can make a beautiful do. And then immediately you're pulling back. Let's try it. You ready? And go. Do. But pull back not to zero. Pull back to piano, and then what do we do? Then you're crescendo for the rest of the beat. Try again. And go. Do. That makes sense? Okay, good. To forte by B4. Or, sorry, forte by your. Yep. Try again. Ready? And go. Do. And then the rest of it, how would you describe everybody? The rhythmic character of this piece already, even if, is it legato? No. So basses, it's really important that you don't set us up with soggy sounds. Oh, be aggressive. Okay, everybody up. Beginning. Give us our stomps on B4 over there, bass. Ready, and. So
Next up, you're going to hear some of the very first day of school, so the actual first day of school of the class at our school that we call Advanced Treble Choir. This means that these are mostly girls, but singers on the treble clef who sing in their second year in our program or third. So they're back for a second dose of treble voices, and these kids are kind of also have a year of boot camp, so they know how to start class. They've already been through a lot of the routines that I discussed in parts 1, 2, 3, and 4 that are true for us, right? So your classroom and your routines, et cetera, would be different, but hopefully your kids that come back for multiple years would start to be trained on how that routine goes so that they can get to the fun stuff quicker. So this is them doing some of their early in-class sight reading. You're seeing them work through a level 5 sight reading factory, 3 parts, and these are mostly 10th graders on the first day of school. And it's kind of rusty, and they giggle a little bit in this clip about how rusty it is. But if you watch the rest of the clip, you'll see them collaborate and work together and try to solve those problems. And then, of course, we move on with the rest of the rehearsal. Okay, now how do you know which line to sing?
How many parts did I set up today? 3. I set up 3. So how do you know which part of the chart to read? The colors. The colors of the bottom part. Where it says top part, middle part, bottom part. Yes. And I don't mean like my haircut is junior high. Okay, everybody knows what to do? Here we go. Let's give it a shot. What key is that? Key of F, which is the grade no one's going to get in this class.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Period. Yeah.
What vowel do you hear? Yeah, do the advanced treble version. Go. Yeah, and when should that vowel be formed? When you breathe. So everybody take an imaginary glass of water. Okay? We're not talking about one of those like sippy cup things like when you're little. This is like open lid like a grown-up. Okay? Right? And then drink water. Do you feel what happens here?
Yes.
It just goes, right? So imagine, don't talk, imagine that your breath in is really drinking water and then sing do. Okay, try it. Yes, but then what did you hear what you did to your throats? Yes. What happened? They closed immediately. Drink water again, go. Keep going. Keep going. Keep going. Keep the throat open. I hear this. What if we have the same space for both? Sing do mi so again. Make it the beautifulest sound you've ever made. Try it. Go. What is the challenge that keeps getting us on that mi and makes it not pretty? We are trying to close our whole darn vocal tract to make that M sound. Do we have to? Watch. Watch. Do, mi, so, mi. Just use your lips. Ready? Again. Starting pitch. Good. Audiate for 20. Audiate for on your own pace. Starting pitch. Again. 1, 2, and sing. Altos, way to keep trucking. Everybody else, what happened? Are we rusty? That's okay. That's okay. Everybody take 30 seconds, circle up with your groups, solve the problem, and do it again.
And finally, this rehearsal clip is our concert choir, which is our most advanced class during the school day. Those chamber choir kids you heard in the first clip are also in this group, but there are a good 50 more of them. So there's about 82 kids in the room. And the clip I'm choosing to share with you here is also the first day of school, where we were reviewing some concepts related to our Takadimi syllables and rhythm unification. You're going to hear also here that we are quite rusty after the summer, and the clapping is just not together, and we have quite a bit of discussion, theoretical conversation, but also rehearsal and repeating of some of those strategies and concepts that we use when we are trying to get our rhythms together. And then later in the clip over on Patreon or on Substack, if you want to watch the rest of it, you'll hear some strategies like using our voices to unify the rhythms rather than our clapping, which is interesting in a vocal ensemble, that our voices are more unified than our clapping is, etc., which calls into play clapping technique and all kinds of other interesting things. So tune in to this clip and see if you find anything that you can use here.
I'm talking about the friend in me part that he was having trouble getting us to do correctly right away. Any guesses? George?
It's because that's not the way we've learned it.
Because that's not the way you already knew the song. Right? So what's that a good lesson for at the beginning of the choir year about audiation? Because that is related to audiation. It's whichever version is playing in your head the loudest is the one you will sing. Does that make sense? Yeah. And so that's like just a good way for us to think about, so then what if I learn it wrong? Any music, what if I learn it wrong? I have to practice it right a certain number of times so that the right version is the one that I hear in my head. Okay, so let's play some games that we would have played last year. Let's do this one first. And notice that the way that I'm stepping and touching is not the way this is doing it. Can you get your hips involved like mine are? What do we know about the hips? They don't lie. Now do this one. Do you feel how much more musical this one is? Okay, I'm going to hold up a number. So nobody should be stomping. Also, you can't see my feet, but you notice that mine are silent. With a clap, fill the beat with the number you see. Ready? And go. And what are we doing A to our C? That's what the hips are for. I've got something to do all the way through. The rushing is happening in the tenor section. Let's fix it. Let's fix it. In an ensemble, we should never do that many measures incorrectly, because we can hear that it's incorrect. And so then what do? We fix it. We would never start laughing about how incorrect it is and then start doing it louder, because that would be, that's just lame. Try again. Ready? And go. But it's not really stepping, is it? How would you describe this? It's a full body roll. I like it. We are leaning with it and rocking with it. With our voice. Ready? And go.
So we start these school years and we pour a ton of our emotional energy into making sure they're set up well for the kids and that we're set up for success. And for many people, and I know I see this on Facebook and I get these questions from young teachers or maybe teachers who are transitioning from band to choir or from middle school to high school or high school to middle school, etc. And we're trying something new in our career, and we put all this emotional energy into it because we want kids to be successful and we want them to like our class. And one of the insights from Harry Wong's book that we know is that how the year starts is disproportionately impactful than any other part of the school year in terms of setting the tone. But it doesn't always go well, and it doesn't always land, so to speak. And what do you do then? How do you respond? Now, everyone's going to have their own style for this, but I'm going to simply recommend a style if you don't feel like you have one. And that is radical, open honesty. I've found that in almost, with no exceptions, that when I screw up, when I do something that impact my students' learning negatively, that the best thing, and as quickly as possible, I need to sit the group down and tell them, guys, I sucked at that. And maybe I won't use that language, although sometimes I do, and you might not like that language, or I screwed that up, or I really was working hard to do this well for you, but I did not hit it. It missed. I set up this activity and maybe I let it go too long. The culture in here right now is not it, chief. We are not doing what we're supposed to be doing. The class is not going the way it's supposed to go, and it's not feeling the way it's supposed to feel. And usually the way I start that conversation is, even if it's a student being a jerk, or even if there's something going on outside of class that kids are bringing into the environment that's making it not very positive, toxic soup or whatever. I don't care what all those things are. Those other things are. I start this way. I start by saying, guys, it's my fault. I let it get this way. I have the power in this room. I am setting the tone, I'm setting the procedures, and I saw that it wasn't going well, and I let this go too far. We are not learning quickly enough. We are not behaving towards each other the way we're supposed to be. Whatever your situation is that's not going well, I just lay it out. I don't beat around the bush. I don't pretend it's not happening. And the very first thing I'll do is take responsibility. I didn't solve this quick enough. I allowed this to happen, whatever. This is me. Now, the kids, oftentimes, we don't give them enough credit for what they will usually say in response. They will usually try to share some of that responsibility. Now, I'm not trying to manipulate them into saying that. I'm not compliment farming or whatever, but they usually do it on their own. They say, like, Mr. Muntz, yeah, but we're talking too much. Or, yeah, but we're late to the risers. Or, we're not all bringing our pencils. Or, yeah, but lots of people are being mean to each other behind their backs, and it's making it hard. I even had a kid raise their hand once in the last couple of years of all the political upheaval that's going on in the world to say, I think we're stressed about the politics, like it's dividing people. I actually had a kid in high school saying that, right? So it opens the door, but I'm modeling that responsibility, which then also makes it cool, so to speak, or makes it okay for them to accept some of the responsibility. Because the reality is, as a teacher, even though I do say that the buck stops with me in terms of what goes on in the classroom, in reality, it's not really one person's fault, teacher or not, when things don't go well. Everybody's got to do their part. And so by offering that up, it's almost like making myself the sacrificial lamb at the beginning of the conversation. It opens up others to do the same. I learned certain lessons from really, really good bosses that I had over the years. So let me give you a story, and I think this will be relevant. Once I was working in church music for a man who was nearing retirement age, and I think one of the best bosses of any kind I've ever had. His name is Reverend Ron Galvin, and I was the church choir director and a part-time employee. The church was struggling with money. This was back around kind of in the immediate aftermath of the 2008 stock market crash and housing market crash, and people all over the place were cutting budgets and cutting programs, reducing pay. Even the school district that I worked for at the time froze pay for 3 years during that time, as in no cost of living increases for 3 years. And it was a very tough time financially for a lot of people. And the church staff was not asked to take a pay cut. That he didn't come to us and say, hey, will you take a pay cut? He simply, in a staff meeting, announced that he would be taking a pay cut. The church really needs this. I will be taking a pay cut. And so, of course, I raised my hand and said, I will also take a pay cut. And then other people started raising their hand and said, I will take a pay cut too. Because we all saw the numbers. We saw the books right in front of us in the staff meeting. But he didn't say, this is your responsibility. You guys should take this pay cut too. Because he knew that by modeling that he was going to get a greater buy-in from the rest of us. Of course, the lesson I learned, and I was a relatively young professional at that time, but that was so impactful. I respected the heck out of him for that, because he could have asked me, he could have just said, I know you have a young child at home for the first time and you just had a pay freeze at school, and now I'm asking you to take this. And I probably wouldn't have felt as good about it. But he gave me the freedom, he gave me the space to step up and do what was right on my own. And sometimes when our classroom environments are not healthy, we need to give our students that opportunity too, to not have their brow beaten, but to have the opportunity to step up. And oftentimes that is our decision of how we present those issues. So let me give you some examples to starting the school year, but that maybe would put this into a frame of reference that would make sense. So this school year, I will say, is one of the best starts to any school year that I've ever had in my career. This is year 23, and I don't know when ever I remember every single choir on our campus having high energy, positive, like so excited to be there moments. Definitely not since the pandemic. And I don't know that ever before. There's always been like the one choir that you have to drag along, or the one group of kids that are just like kind of toxic or whatever. I don't have any of that right now. And I'm knocking on wood, and it's a long school year ahead of me. I'm sure we'll have our challenges, but the start to the school year has been incredible. And I don't think it's because of any one thing, but I sure think making those 4 episodes that I did to start the school year before my school year had started, to where I was really thinking about all aspects of how the school year was going to start, might have had an impact in that. And so I hope that in many ways, as you guys process some of these things, that your future school years will be awesome too. All of that being said, we will miss. I'm a veteran teacher and I've been doing this for a long time, but I will still miss. There will be years that I miss between now and the time I retire. But those conversations where we are able to press pause and reset are really, really crucial. And that's its own set of skills, is to say, I know that it's been like this, but it doesn't have to be like this forever. What do we want to do? And I do think those have to be we kind of conversations. Because when things are negative in a classroom, when the teacher and the conductor, especially that conductor-singer dynamic that can be so power imbalance and all that, where when the teacher starts to get meaner and meaner and meaner to make it happen and make it happen and make it happen, it just is a hole that keeps getting deeper. We can't dig our way out of that. And so it has to be a pause, a reset, a buy-in moment. And so if you're going through that right now, then what I would suggest to you is to simply say to your kids, sit them down, put the music down, and talk about it. Talk about how it makes you feel. I'm not suggesting that you start crying in front of them and trauma dump on them. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying, though, is to be vulnerable in a way that is professionally responsible. Be vulnerable, be open with them, and say to them that this is not going the way I want it to go, and I think it's not going the way you deserve it to go. How are you feeling? And let them talk about it, because ultimately, even the kids that are like goofing around a lot, they ultimately wouldn't be there if they didn't want to do music at a high level or do music in an academic setting, like in a school. Give them a chance to talk about how to make it better, and then get involved, and then start the episode 1 of our back to school series and start over and tell them that's what you're doing. We're going to pretend like it's day 1. Let's start over. Let's pretend like summer break is over. We're starting choir today. It's week 2, but we're going to pretend like it's day 1, and we're going to get a refresh. That's not perfect. I think Harry Wong was right about this. It's not perfect. It's really best if we get it right on day 1, but that doesn't mean we always will. So folks, good luck. I hope this series has been a useful thing for you. As I've always been saying, for the last 5 parts of the series, if I think of more things, I'll just make a part 6. But right now, I'm going to go focus on school and focus on the interviews and the guest appearances that happen on this Choirosophy podcast. I've got some more awesome ones coming up this fall, and I hope you stick around and continue to be part of the conversation. I value you and your listening, and I value your contributions on the Patreon and your using of the promo codes and Sight Reading Factory and my music folders and my 3minutetheory.com and the sheet music at Graphite and all those things. When you use that promo code, it really helps me out a lot. It's why I'm able to do this. And the Patreon subscribers keep the lights on, so I appreciate all of you so much. Thank you. See you next time. Thank you so much for sticking around to the end of a conversation. If you are still hearing my voice, that means you're one of the MVPs, one of the diehards, one of the real ones, as the kids say. So if you are willing on the way out to check out a few different ways that you can help me continue to make this show high quality. 1, use the promo code. That's the biggest one. At Sight Reading Factory, at mymusicfolders.com, at mychoirropes.com, at graphitepublishing.com, and endeavormusicpublishing.com. All of those take the Choirosophy checkout code, and of course now the newest one is 3 Minute Theory. You can get a 15% discount when you enter Choirosophy at checkout there. And of course, going to Apple Podcasts and leaving a positive review is very helpful there, and sharing the episodes to your colleagues in real life and on social media. All of those things are incredibly helpful and allow me to continue to create this resource for you. Thank you so much for tuning in. We'll see you next time.